May 8, 2025. Vatican City. The Sistine Chapel. The air was not merely thick with anticipation. It vibrated with a primal, almost preternatural tension. Outside, the faithful prayed, unaware of the arcane forces at play. Inside the hallowed confines of the Sistine, where Michelangelo's divine judgment loomed, a different kind of judgment was unfolding. For months, the names had circulated like poisoned whispers through the ancient Roman alleyways, amplified by the digital echo chambers of the global Catholic world. Parolin, Tagle, Zuppi, each a titan in his own right, representing not just factions, but divergent destinies for a church reeling from years of internal strife, public scandal, and a growing sense of existential dread. But what if the frontrunner was always a phantom, a meticulously crafted illusion? What if the real game was played in the deepest shadows, orchestrated by an unseen hand, a cabal whose agenda transcended mere earthly power, leading to an outcome so audacious, so improbable, it defied all conventional wisdom and hinted at something far more profound? We are about to peel back the layers of sacred secrecy that shroud the most clandestine event in the Catholic Church, the papal conclave that culminated in the enigmatic election of Pope Leo XIV. Forget the public narratives, the convenient labels of conservative and progressive. This was a chess match played on a cosmic scale, where alliances shifted like desert sands, and the very soul of the Church, its destiny for the coming century, hung in a balance delicately weighted by ancient prophecies and modern machinations. The new daily compass, among other hushed voices in the Vatican's inner sanctum, through a meticulous reconstruction of leaked details, or perhaps carefully placed fragments of truth, and forensic analysis of cardinal voting patterns, has begun to paint a picture not of a chaotic free-for-all, but of a remarkably swift, almost predestined election. Cardinal Robert Francis Prévost, a name whispered by few as a true papabile just weeks before, ascended to the chair of Peter in an astonishingly brief 4 ballots over 2 days. A staggering speed, especially considering the deep ideological rifts that many believed had fractured the College of Cardinals beyond repair. How did a man, a relative outsider from the arcane circles of the American hierarchy, achieve such a comprehensive, almost unnerving victory? The answer lies not in a sudden, spontaneous groundswell of popularity, but in a carefully laid groundwork, a series of calculated moves by influential figures who, for their own diverse and perhaps conflicting reasons, saw in Prévost a uniquely qualified, and perhaps surprisingly pliable, candidate for a world on the brink. From the very outset, the prevailing narrative was clear, almost aggressively so. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, was the man destined for the papacy. His unrivaled diplomatic experience, his decades-long tenure at the very heart of the Curia, his perceived continuity with the previous pontificate, all these factors positioned him as the logical, the inevitable choice for those seeking stability. He was the flag-bearer of the conservative traditionalist wing, yet paradoxically, a figure whose diplomatic skill was thought to appeal to a significant bloc within the Curia's intricate web. His support was estimated at a formidable 40 to 50 votes in the crucial first ballot. A strong showing, certainly, but crucially, not enough for the 2/3 supermajority of 89 votes required. This initial performance, though seemingly robust, was his undoing. The old Roman saying echoes for a reason: he who enters as pope leaves as cardinal. Parolin, the presumed favorite, failed to land the knockout blow, and in that failure, a door opened for the unexpected. But if Parolin was the expected contender, the public face of the coming struggle, who was the true dark horse, the real wild card hidden in plain sight? It wasn't a sudden, charismatic speech in the pre-conclave general congregations that propelled Prévost forward. As Cardinal Gregory of Chicago, a man known for his astute, if sometimes understated, observations, later revealed, Prévost engaged quite effectively in the smaller group conversations. These were the true battlegrounds, the informal dinners where alliances were forged and broken over clandestine glasses of Amarone, the whispered conversations in the hushed corridors of the Domus Sanctae Marthae. This was where the real work was done, where the groundwork was laid not in public pronouncements, but in the intimate, secret chambers of influence. It was here that a network of cardinals, disparate in their public stances, began to see in Prévost something they all desperately needed. Consider the players, their motives shrouded in layers of nuance and personal ambition. Cardinal Reinhard Marx, a leading progressive voice, surprisingly emerged as a key advocate for Prévost. Why? Publicly, Marx, a financial maestro and head of the Vatican's Economic Council, valued Prévost's instrumental role in brokering a fragile compromise on the controversial German synodal path, a movement many conservatives viewed as dangerously heterodox. But beneath the veneer of ecclesiastical diplomacy, there was a deeper, more pragmatic, and perhaps cynical motivation: the precarious financial situation of the Holy See. Marx knew that resolving this looming crisis, whispered to be far more dire than publicly acknowledged, would hardly be managed without additional American help. Was this a silent plea for financial leverage, an unspoken agreement that an American pope, especially one with Prévost's background in global administration, would unlock the vast coffers of American Catholicism, perhaps even access to the enigmatic financial networks of certain ultra-wealthy American Catholic philanthropists? The idea of a progressive cardinal pushing a candidate who was rather conservative in moral, theological, and canon law matters was an eyebrow-raising anomaly, a stark contradiction that suggested a deeper, far more complex web of motivations than simple ideological alignment. It hinted at a darker deal, a necessary compromise to save the Church from an unacknowledged collapse. And then there was Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York, a figure often associated with the more conservative wing of the American Church, now described by insiders as a true kingmaker in this hidden game. Dolan, who admitted he had barely known Prévost until the pre-conclave, was instrumental in ensuring that Prévost was not just seen as a viable candidate, but as a safe one. Even among the most staunchly conservative cardinals, he vouched for Prévost's orthodoxy, presenting him as someone who could bring the Vatican back to normality in dogmatic, liturgical, and canon law matters after the, at times, erratic governance style of Pope Francis, a thinly veiled critique that resonated with many disaffected traditionalists. This was the true genius of Prévost's rapid emergence, his almost chameleon-like ability to appear as a bridge between seemingly irreconcilable opposing visions. He was a candidate who could satisfy both progressive elements by virtue of his missionary experience, his long-standing work in the global South, and his perceived continuity with Pope Francis's vision for a poor church, detached from traditional power structures, and conservative elements by virtue of his quiet theological training, his sober and orthodox alternative to the excesses of ambiguity in recent years. As Cardinal Raymond Burke, a man known for his unflinching doctrinal rigidity, was reportedly convinced. It was as if Prévost possessed a coded spiritual key, unlocking doors on both sides of the divide. The picture that emerges from these fragmented insights is not of a spontaneous groundswell of divine inspiration, but a meticulously orchestrated maneuver, a chess game played not with rooks and bishops on a board, but with souls and destinies. Cardinal Giuseppe Versaldi, a shadowy figure known for his quiet influence, is reported to have played a decisive role, building a network of protection and credibility around Prévost within the Italian episcopate, ensuring his acceptance among the deeply entrenched Roman Old Guard. Even Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the Camerlengo and a respected Vatican administrator, despite his close ties to the previous pontificate, reportedly provided institutional support for Prévost's candidacy, perhaps sensing the inevitable shift in the cosmic winds. The American cardinals, for once united by a shared nationality that transcended their internal squabbles, largely rallied behind him, dispelling the long-held notion that an American identity would be a significant, perhaps insurmountable hurdle to the papacy. It was as if a preordained destiny was unfolding, piece by piece. The first ballot was merely a ritualistic performance, a necessary step in the ancient dance. Parolin was ahead, certainly, his name called out with the weight of centuries of diplomatic tradition. But his failure to secure a larger initial block of votes was his fatal flaw, a public display of weakness that the unseen orchestrators immediately capitalized upon. Prevost, despite lower initial estimates in the public sphere, gathered a significant number of votes, more than anyone had quietly anticipated. The second ballot, held on the morning of May 8th, proved to be the turning point, the decisive moment where the hidden hand truly made its move. Prevost surged, gaining a critical mass of votes, swiftly eclipsing Parolin. This, according to carefully leaked reports, was the moment Parolin, with a visible, almost visceral realization that his path to victory was irrevocably blocked, clearly indicated that he wanted to transfer his package of votes to Prevost. A stunning act of concession, if true, a strategic pivot so dramatic it reshaped the entire trajectory of the conclave, revealing the deep, unspoken agreement that had been forged. The French Cardinal Jean-Marc Avelan, a man of subtle influence, reacted similarly, immediately shifting his support, a clear signal to his own bloc. During the tense, hushed lunch break at the Santa Marta residence, the negotiations intensified, no longer mere whispers, but direct, urgent appeals. It was here, in private, almost clandestine, discussions, far from the prying eyes of the world, that the fate of the papacy was truly sealed. The Latin American bloc, inspired by Prevost's long missionary work in the impoverished regions of Peru and his quiet yet effective leadership of the Augustinian order, which boasts a strong, fervent presence in Africa, largely rallied behind him. Many Italian cardinals, faced with the choice between a prominent Asian or African cardinal, like Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, seen by some as too progressive, or Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Besungu, considered too much of an unknown quantity, and an American with a deep, tangible connection to the global South, opted for Prevost, seeing in him a safer, more predictable option than a true outsider. The conservative cardinals, influenced by the subtle nudges of figures like Burke and Dolan, saw in him a safe, yet undeniably reform-minded choice. Even the elusive, unclassifiable group, those cardinals who didn't fit neatly into traditional ideological categories, those who valued consensus above all else, shifted massively to Prevost. By the third ballot, the outcome was no longer in doubt. It was a foregone conclusion. Prevost had achieved an almost unassailable lead. This was reportedly the moment Prevost himself, according to Dolan's later anecdote, threw his hands over his head and began to come to terms with the inevitable, a silent acknowledgement of the weight settling upon him. He was already beginning to draft his first papal address, not on a formal parchment, but on a simple college notepad during the lunch break, a testament to the startling speed and certainty of his impending election. In the fourth and final ballot, a mere 2 days into the conclave, Prevost secured more than 90 votes, well exceeding the required 2/3 majority. Some whisper he garnered over 100 votes, a silent testament to a surprisingly broad consensus, while others suggest it was just over 100, a more modest, yet still undeniably decisive margin that hinted at a deeper, unspoken alliance. And so, Parolin, the seasoned Vatican diplomat, the supposed favorite, was undeniably the loser of this conclave. His visible disappointment on the balcony, captured by the discerning eyes of observers standing beside Pope Leo and Cardinal Dolan, was a telling, almost theatrical detail. His failure to broaden his support beyond his immediate curial network, particularly from the increasingly powerful cardinals of Africa and Asia, coupled with his perceived links to controversial Vatican financial scandals and the opaque China agreement, ultimately sealed his fate. These were not just rumors. They were meticulously placed accusations used to subtly undermine his authority. The choice of name, Leo XIV, was itself a subtle yet profound declaration of intent, a coded message to those who understood the deeper currents of church history. By directly referring to Leo XIII, 1878 to 1903, Pope Leo XIV established a deliberate, calculated link with a pontificate marked by the Church's cautious, yet significant opening to social questions through the monumental encyclical Rerum Novarum. This signaled a focus on social justice, the dignity of labor, and a commitment to the poor, themes that resonated deeply with his own missionary background and aligned with the aspirations of the global South. Yet, it also invoked a pontiff who staunchly defended Catholic doctrine against the encroaching tides of modernism and relativism, hinting at a desire for both radical social engagement and unwavering doctrinal clarity. This duality, this carefully chosen balance, suggested a pontificate designed to bridge the great chasms that had opened within the Church. The conclave that elected Robert Francis Prevost as Pope Leo XIV, shrouded in its sacred oath of secrecy, indeed marks a significant, perhaps even revolutionary, turning point in the long, storied history of the Catholic Church. The election of the first American pope, following a Polish, a German, and an Argentine, undeniably confirmed that the papacy was no longer the sole prerogative of Europeans. It also suggested a new dynamic, a hidden mechanism by which a candidate's unassuming nature, his quiet competence, his ability to transcend traditional divisions, and to secure broad, even if initially unspoken, support from various factions, proved more crucial than pre-conclave frontrunner status or overt campaigning. It was a victory for the unassuming, the underestimated, the subtly influential. The internal workings of the conclave remain bound by the sacred oath of secrecy, punishable by excommunication, but the leaks, the careful reconstructions, the subtle hints from those involved, paint a picture of intense negotiations, strategic alliances, and a rapid, almost preordained shift of power that few outside the inner circle had anticipated. Was it truly a carefully choreographed plan, an elaborate spiritual performance designed to elect a unifying figure who could appeal to both progressive and conservative elements, a grand solution to the deeply felt, often bitter, divisions within the Church? Or was it a more organic convergence where Prevost's unassuming nature, his extensive missionary background, and his quiet competence made him the most palatable choice for a weary college of cardinals desperate for stability, peace, and an end to the public turmoil after a tumultuous pontificate? The undeniable presence of Cardinal Burke, a fierce, unyielding defender of tradition, reportedly finding an orthodox alternative, and a man who could lead the Church back to its ancient roots in Prevost, alongside prominent progressive cardinals like Marx and Cupich, all subtly supporting the same candidate, speaks volumes about the unexpected, almost chillingly broad, consensus that emerged. It suggests that while the ideological battles raged fiercely outside the Sistine Chapel, inside, a powerful, almost desperate, pragmatic desire for unity, a yearning for an end to public ambiguity and relentless infighting, took precedence above all else. The unclassifiable group of cardinals, those enigmatic figures who were not firmly aligned with any one traditional bloc, those who were less driven by ideology and more by an almost Machiavellian sense of practical survival for the Church, ultimately proved to be the true kingmakers, their decisive votes the unseen hand that sealed the outcome. So what does this tell us about the future of the Church under Pope Leo XIV? His choice of name, his initial emphasis on peace, dialogue, and missionary evangelization, and the rapid cross-factional support he received, all point to a pontificate aimed at bridge building, healing, and a quiet, yet firm, return to what he perceives as fundamental truths. Yet the underlying currents of ideological tension, the lingering, unresolved questions about Vatican financial stability, and the subtle, often ruthless interplay of power within the Curia all remain, swirling beneath the serene surface. The conclave revealed a hidden hand at work, guiding the cardinals towards a consensus that defied all predictions. But whose hand was it, truly? Was it purely the benevolent hand of the Holy Spirit, guiding the Church towards a brighter future? Or was it the result of a meticulously planned, behind-the-scenes campaign, a masterful game of chess that subtly outmaneuvered the traditional favorites and installed a figure uniquely positioned to navigate the stormy waters ahead? The answers will likely only emerge over time, as Pope Leo XIV begins to define his pontificate, as his actions speak louder than the whispers of the conclave, louder than the carefully crafted leaks and the partisan analyses. But one thing is terrifyingly clear. The election of the first American pope was not an accident. It was the result of a complex, almost arcane interplay of forces, a convergence of diverse and perhaps conflicting motivations, and a chilling testament to the fact that in the Vatican, as in all matters of profound human and divine consequence, the game is often far more intricate, and the players far more subtle, their agendas far more deeply layered than meets the eye. The white smoke rose, signaling a new era. But the true story of how it came to be, the real clandestine drama of the conclave, had only just begun to unfold, its secrets waiting to be whispered to those brave enough to listen.